All right, pruning. This is my best part. We're going to finish up with pruning. This is my most fun part because I really like pruning stuff. It's calming to me sometimes. It's not calming when I go out and look at other people's pruning. It's kind of calming to me. So we call it natural target. They don't use that word as much anymore, but I use it because you're still looking for these targets, these things of what am I looking to see when I want to prune. All right, two things. You're looking for what we call the branch bark ridge. That is where these little sticks are. They're the little mustache that goes in the branch union. It's like a little mustache in there. Sometimes it's really obvious, sometimes it isn't. Then you're looking for the branch collar. The branch collar, I'm sorry, this should be down here. This is the branch collar. It should be even with that one, right? See those little concentric rings down there? It's the collar, it's the under part, not the whole thing, it's under here, all right? Those are two things that you need to know where to prune. This happens to be a maple. Maple are oppositely arranged. That's important to know too. You have to know the species in order to know how to prune them. Because let's say, for example, you cut the top of this off. Why? I don't know you would do that, but let's say you did. How's it going to grow? That way, right? So even if you're doing it on a twig, now you got to grow them like this. What's it going to become? A bush, right? A shrub on a stick. So you have to understand how do we do that instead so it doesn't, we understand how it will respond when we prune it. All right? Is this good pruning? No. Where did this happen? Sadly, it happened on Centennial campus. Sadly, NC State did not do it, although they allowed it to be done. I might have had a little head explosion at the time. As I drove up onto campus and I saw these trees all newly pruned, I said, what happened here? And I called a person I know, and he said, oh, well, the lawn care company said that they could prune the trees. And I said, and do you believe them? Well, they gave us a really good rate. So what? So I thought I made my case clear. This is bad. We're supposed to be the leaders. And the next year they did it again. I said, and then I called up and said, "You're kidding me, aren't you?" So they don't like hearing from me usually. But so these are red maples. Two ways I know because I took the picture. But see these little black specks on here? Sort of. You can see those little black specks. That's gloomy scale. Gloomy scale happens on red maple in hot, dry areas. So it is a native pest. You don't find it in the woods very much. You might find one in an acre, but it is a native pest. But boy, you put that little red maple out in the street in downtown Raleigh, it's going to be a gloomy scale attractant. It's going to say, come on, guys, because the scale loves it hot. The tree does not. And then here's a great idea. Red maple, the other common name, swamp maple. So it likes it wet. Think about that, right? Think about it. You think of river birds. So why are these wrong? That's right. They cut the collar right off. They said, oh, we're going to get 3 branches with one, and we're just going to swipe that baby off, right? They also use what we call a stick chain. I don't know if that's what I call it. You know, it's got the motor down here and a big chain, the big bar, and the chain out there. I think by the end of the day, these dudes were so tired, and I get it. They were like drunken sailors. It's like, whoa. I don't have all the pictures, but they marked up these trees badly. Like there are little scars and things everywhere on the trunks of these trees. Why is the other one wrong?
They didn't do the 3
They didn't do the 3 cut. Yeah, they kind of just like said it ripped off. If you look close to the angle's not quite right. The angle of the cut is the hardest thing for new people pruning to get right. You can get it to the collar, but the angle is the tricky part, and I'll tell you that in a second. Here's why we don't take the branch collar off. Years and years ago, they used to do that all the time. It's a forestry thing, right? We're getting those branches off of there. They didn't realize that they were making worse knots than they would have if they had just let the branch die on its own. Those shaded branches are gonna die. You don't need to cut them off. They're gonna do their own thing and they're gonna close it over right. But see that little dark triangular area in there? That's the branch protection zone. You cut that off, that means now those decay organisms that are flying around everywhere, the minute you cut it, they're right there. That's going to keep them from penetrating into the plant. It is a chemical and physical barrier. Chemical meaning there are chemicals in the plant that are not pleasant to fungi. Fungi don't like them. They're toxic to them. And then there's like resins and gunk in trees, sap and stuff that plug those things up. So kind of a double whammy to keep them out, right? So that's why we have those. 3 types of pruning. This is but to me the most important part of pruning is understanding how you do it. So a reduction cut, that's how you shorten a tree. We shorten trees because we put them in the wrong place sometimes, right? That's why people do topping. This is not topping. Heading is a topping cut. But reduction pruning, you see you're taking it back to a lateral branch. And it's always typically the rule of thirds, right? You take it to a branch that's about 1/3 of the diameter of the one you're removing, so that it takes over the food producing capabilities of that. Now it can be more than one if they're smaller than that, but you see what I mean? So that branch, you can see that A is about 2/3 bigger than that B branch. You got it? So you can see the angle, all right? Is there a collar there?
Yes.
Is there? Not where the cut was made. There is a collar on the side branch that was left, okay? So I just want you to keep that in your mind. No collar there. A heading cut, it reduces the length. That's another way people reduce it. And on shrubs, knock yourself out. Shear the heck out of them. I don't care if you're not going to cause any problem. But shearing cuts are made typically on smaller branches, unless you're doing an improper topping cut, right? So I see many trees that are, 60 feet tall that people only want to be 40 feet tall, and so they cut them off wherever they feel like. That is a topping cut. That is a bad cut, because what happens is you get decay in there. There's nothing that keeps it from moving down into the tree, and so then it still lives, right? Sorry about that. Still lives, right? So you know how you get that donut of closure on a wound, right? So you have that donut of cambium on the outside, so it's still alive, but then you get all these sprouts coming out of there. And on some trees that grow 20 feet in a year, now you have 3 or 4 of those things attached to what? A few slivers of cells. So you've actually made the tree less safe than it was before. People think they're making it safer. No, it is not. They don't realize that. Does it shorten the life of the tree? Most likely. Here's the challenge we face as tree people. Nobody's living that long to do that kind of research. You got to get tenure, so you can't, it's got to be 6 years. Okay, yeah. Bottom line is it just takes too long for us to really gather that data. Knowing all that we do, we kind of put it together to say, of course you're shortening the life of that tree. But somebody might say, oh, who cares? It's 80 versus 100. Well, I care, but again, doing it right is really important. The last cut is that collar cut, that removal cut, right? And so that's where you're taking it back to that collar. So you can see the branch bark ridge there, a little mustache, and you got the collar. Now I want you to look at the 2 of those. I'm going to try to do this to make, see this right here? Here's your, and I want to do it for you guys in a second. Here's our branch bark ridge, here's our collar. What would you say that angle is between there? Look at it this way. Here's our branch bark ridge, here's our angle. About what is the angle of that cut? 45 degrees. That's what you're looking for. Getting that angle right is the trickiest part. You get it too steep, it's too big of a wound. You're trying to get it as round as possible. Remember, branches aren't round, always they're kind of elliptical shaped or whatever. So what happens? There's lots of things that happen. You have to understand what's going to happen, the response of the plant when you do that. Is it going to invigorate interior foliage? Hey, yeah, for all of them. That's great. That's good. And remember, people get in there and like you start pruning every branch out of the inside of a tree, you're not doing any good for yourself or the plant, because those interior branches are going to die on their own. They're going to be shaded out. All right, does it induce sprouting? Reduction? Yeah, that's part of the dilemma because it's not at a branch collar. Removal? Maybe, depending on the species, but most of the time if you do it right, no. Okay, heading cut? Absolutely, that's what you're doing. That's what you're trying to do. You're creating, again, a big shrub on a stick. Does it reduce the density of the crown? Reduction? Yeah. Removal? Yeah. Heading? Yeah. You're making it a lot bigger. Right? Now again, you're creating a bush on a stick. Right? How about the crown height being reduced? Reduction in heading? Yes. Removal? No. Makes sense, right? You're just removing it. You're not doing the height. You're not shortening it. You're removing branches. Okay? All right. And then crown width reduced? Yeah, typically. Removal maybe slightly. Again, you're not really trimming the outer canopy of the tree. All right, and cut back to a natural boundary, reduction, sort of, as I said. No collar there. There is a branch bark ridge, but it doesn't really belong to the one that you took off, right? Will it close over? Yes, it will, but not as readily as it would if it was a removal cut. Okay, and then heading, absolutely not. Does this make sense to y'all? So study this, like when you get to PowerPoint, study that, think about it. Go out and look at some trees and think, okay, that makes sense, what we're doing here. Right, here's that method you mentioned, the 1, 2, 3 cut method. Yes, you absolutely have to do that every single blessed time. Oh, no, you don't. If you have a hold of the branch, it's not a really heavy branch, and you can cut the weight off, just doing the undercut, go for it, it's not the end of the world, right? But if it's a heavy branch over 2 inches, then make that undercut. I teach my students this, and invariably, every one of them says, yeah, you make this cut, and then you come in here and make your second cut. What's the point of making that cut? And I make them, oh yeah, I guess that's right. And then you make your final cut. So you see the gray cut? Here's your branch bark ridge and their gray cut, seeing kind of a 45-degree angle in there. So here's one I did demonstrate. See how cool that is? You go back. If you do that right, it's called a jump cut. That means it jumps away from your face. If you are in a tree with a chainsaw, which I have, that's pretty nice. It doesn't hit your face. It's like, yes, we want everything to move away from us. So they're very cool when you see it because it does jump right off of there. All right, there's our final removal cut at the 45-degree angle. You can't quite see the branch bark ridge there, but that's what we got. Good cuts. Hey, done by campus. NC State, they did this. These are sawtooth oak in the brickyard. You cannot see those anymore. You know you did it right if it looks like a belly button. After it first closes over, hey, your little belly button, and then you won't see it in time. Is it still there? Absolutely. It's a knot. It's a branch. It's still going to be there. Almost. Almost. That's a lace bark elm. What's wrong with it? A little too close at the branch bark ridge, right? The angle's a little tight in there. Is it going to close over? Absolutely. It's young. It's young. It's already doing it. It'll close that over in no time. It's a young tree. I've seen them do it on lace bark elm, limbs this big. Do I recommend that? Absolutely not. If you can do it, if you can save them. Sometimes something breaks, you got to make a big cut. And so in that case, though, I've seen it done so well, they close over absolutely beautifully. All right? So getting it right. So what do you, hey, guess where we are again? Yeah, so we're at Walmart. You can tell that a bad staking job. Right, that's that Chinese pistache. Now they are supposed to have multi-stems, but you know, what do you take off? Dead limbs, right? Crossing branches, codominant stems. You don't want to get too crazy, taking stuff on the inside out. Like in this tree right here, number one, I would never have taken it. It's got too many main leaders. All right, just too many. Actually, I don't think that was Chinese pistache. I think that was the maples. So a maple should have only one when you buy it. One single main leader on shade trees. Oaks, elms, but not elms, oaks, maples, whatever. One single tree, so it should look perfectly triangular. Right? It's going to change as it grows, but that's what you want. And big story there, we can talk about that sometime you want to talk about pruning. Broken, dead, or diseased branches, of course. It always makes me laugh when I see them say, you buy a new tree, you want to take off the dead, broken, and diseased branches. Why are you buying a tree with dead, broken, and diseased branches? You know, it's going to remind yourself of that. Trees are not inexpensive. How many guys been shopping for plants lately? Holy mackerel. Yeah, scary. Suckers, yeah, you're taking suckers off again at the base. I know a guy that used to do that with glyphosate. Don't do that. Yeah, you can, but don't do it. And again, which way do you want the branches to grow? If you have some next to your house, you can cut them off. You know, and removal cuts are often the best. So you're keeping it growing the direction that you want it to grow. So is it too late for this? It's a cute little Japanese maple. What would you take off? Would you take this one? Yeah. Would you take this one? Maybe. Oh, you go, girl. I like it. You get it right down here. Yeah. Go for it. Taking it off. Maybe. Maybe. Is there anything wrong with any of those choices? I would say no, depending on when you do it, right? When in the year. And I'll tell you, do not do significant pruning during the summer when it is hot and dry. Also, I'm going to throw this crazy thing out there to you guys. Is right now they talk about now's the time for planting, right? Fall for planting, right? They also talk about how you prune in the dormant season. So I want you to think about this. While tree care companies do it a lot, and most of the time it's fine, do not take a lot off in the winter, in the dormant period. Do not take a lot of branches that are bigger than 2 inch off. So we're talking here's 2 inch. You start taking a lot of stuff bigger and a lot of it out of the canopy. What's going to happen? What happens during the dormant season? Nothing. Not to the top of the tree, right? Nothing's happening. So that wound is going to be exposed to the air for a longer period of time because the tree is not actively growing then. So that wound exposure, that means one of the biggest enemies of trees is oxygen inside the plant. Right? They don't want oxygen in the wood. Yeah, it's moving through the vascular system, but not in that wood per se, because inside what goes in there too are the fungal organisms. And inside the tree, when it's dry in there, they're happy and the tree is not. So they will start sprouting or germinating or whatever you want to call it inside there. And you can get decay inside the plant because of that. So you see it. I'm sure you've seen cuts that were made that dried up and are all cracked open. That is a problem. Right? That's why I say be very hesitant in how much you take off. So that's kind of a change in what people have heard in the past few years, because all the tree care companies are selling pruning practices for the winter. That's when they have time to do it. And again, you're not wanting to do it in the dead of summer, so it really would limit the time frame for when they can do pruning. And it's perfectly fine most of the time. I just want you to keep in your mind what happens. You get dried wounds and issues inside the plant. Yes. So to me, the best time to prune, if you're for trees particularly, right? And again, shrubs are a lot more flexible, but you're talking bigger, mature plants, right? If you're going to be trimming them, I would like to see them go into leaf, have the leaves harden off, and then you do the pruning. After that, you don't want to do it when the leaves are still kind of coming out, because that's a transition period. The plant's like under stress and going through a bunch of stuff. You wait till after the leaves harden off. Here's the problem though, right? Is it's a lot more work because there's a lot more vegetation now. You got all these leaves you got to do something with on the branches. And so that's a lot of times, and it's not as easy to see the structure. So my idea is if you're going to do it or you're going to talk to an arborist to do it, have them come in the fall and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. And then they mark the branches and then they come the next spring and they take them off. Does that make sense? Yeah. Once they're done. That to me is the ideal time because then you're before getting before summer. So yeah, I'm going to finish up. So this is actually in Garner as well. That's at the Food Lion that I shop at. It's like I went there one day and I'm like, oh good Lord. I might have had a little bit of a heart attack. And I said, what did they do here? And why? So I'm looking this way. I turn around and look the other way in the parking lot, and there's still some lovely river birch there. Why they prune them to this day, I have no idea. And they actually brought in a tree care company. I don't even want to say tree care company. That's insulting the tree care companies. They brought in a company from Alabama to come up and take these trees, to ruin these trees. So they ended up taking them all down, and now there's nothing there because they only put a few crepe myrtle back on the edge. And it's like, what was the whole purpose of that? To ruin the parking lot. I never did ask, but yeah, that's just bad. Why? On so many, you just got to ask. And of course, seriously, and we've tried to come up with a better name because crepe murder, it sounds cool, linguistically or however you want to say that, crepe murder, it sounds great. However, it's not murder, right? Because they live. It's not, Bryce Lane and I tried to say, well, how about crepe manslaughter? No, because that still implies death. So it's kind of like a crepe assault. It's pretty bad. Yeah. So as I said, there are ways to shorten them. And again, why do people do it? It doesn't take much skill, does it? It's pretty easy. And again, those people aren't coming to the meetings. Now, I've seen people do tipping of taking back the seed heads. I got no problem with that. If that's what people want to do. They're rounding it off. They're taking the seed heads off, but they're really small. Right, you're cutting, making little tiny cuts. That to me is a preference of the property owner. I don't have it, but scientifically, nothing wrong with it. There's plenty wrong with this. And again, now if you wanted to pollard this, and that's the height you wanted to pollard it at, that's where you would make that initial cut. And we did that. We have some of those in our teaching area because I wanted to show the students how to do it. But I did it one day and I hadn't told anybody. Somebody called, or what happened out at the teaching area? Did you top those trees? I said, yes, indeed, I did. Well, why? Because we're going to pollard them. It's okay. It's all relaxed. So I've been taking them, and I've had the students go in with loppers to cut that stuff off. Anyway, so they're learning how to do that. And that is at the Elizabethan Gardens. A lot of people in this country don't like that. That's cool. I get it. That every style, people like different styles. I certainly prefer being done correctly than topping them. They do it to large trees in Europe. I've seen sycamores, a really good option they use there. If you've ever been to, I've never been to France, but I've certainly seen pictures of the trees. Like you're talking an 80-foot tall sycamore that they do that to, and then they're maintaining it like that forever. So imagine the crew and the amount of people that have to get up there. Shearing? Yeah, we can do a lot of shearing. We shear a lot of things. We are obsessed with shearing in this country. I don't know why. This is cool. Like some people are seriously obsessed. It must be the certain height and every branch must be within a certain size. These are done correctly. By the way, this is a white pine. Pretty crazy, huh? You can shear a lot of plants. Beech trees, they shear beech trees in Europe as well. You can shear them here. I think one of the espalier, Bartlett, was sheared. So it's just a matter of doing it right. And notice he's got this right? It has the triangle at the base. There's a lot of different things you can use, right? Some very cool Japanese hand shears, super sharp. But if you're doing a lot, you definitely need a powered one. And then, of course, they have the battery operated ones now. So this is a Taxus or a U. This needs something done. Because this is what happens when you shear stuff for an extended period of time. You start getting really woody. So what do? You come in here 3 to 5 years, every 3 to 5 years, and you either open it up by hand, which is kind of too late for this, or you rejuvenate it. That means you cut it back down to heavy wood. And you do it in late winter, early spring. You can do it with boxwoods, you can do it with hollies. I've seen it done with hollies, camellias, 20 feet tall, cut them in half. You can do it. Got to do it at the right time of year. Does it look bad? It looks a little rough. Your client's like, what the heck did you tell me to do that for, right? But you can certainly do it. Belia, spirea, great plants to do that with. What's this plant? This is a happy plant, right? You gotta love this. First comes out in spring. Other than this, it's just a big green blob, right? This was at Eastern Kentucky where I taught many years ago, and every year they came in and rejuvenated these to the ground. Look how beautiful they look every year. Problem with forsythias, right? Blooms on old growth. If you prune it every month in the summer, you're pruning off all your flower buds, right? You're causing problems. Okay, I got to finish up. So rejuvenation, barberry. Why did they do that? I don't know, because you can impale yourself on there. Let's just cut them a little shorter. That's a hydrangea. Hydrangeas are, see, that to me just looks bad. Evergreens, you can certainly do rejuvenate pruning on azaleas, but the azaleas, like when you do, that's really important. They bloom on again, we have some that bloom fall and spring, right? So either way, you're going to lose some blooms. If you do this and you do this correctly, they will not necessarily bloom that first year, right? After that first year. So you prune them after they bloom, like say June or whatever. The following year, they're probably not going to produce a lot of flowers. The next year, they're going to go crazy. They're going to look absolutely gorgeous. So it really does help. The plant's kind of getting tired, right? Not blooming well. But the thing is, the plant has to be healthy otherwise and well established to rejuvenate. All right, stress, various stresses. We've got lots of stresses, right? All kinds of stresses, different issues, and certainly water, too much, not enough is a huge stress in this state, right? In many places in the world. Some people get it and others don't. So we know that this is what's going to happen, right? Improper plant selection, improper installation, improper maintenance could lead to those other stresses being a problem. All right, guess what tree this is? This is a native tree here. A native woodland tree. Blooms really well in the spring. White flowers, indeed. Dogwood. This is flowering dogwood. Where's flowering dogwood native? Like, where does it grow? It grows in what? Understory, right? So it grows on the edge of the forest. The roots are cool and the top is in full sun. Where do we put it? In the front yard, in full shade, in full sun, in competition with turf. You know, we say, why is this tree not doing so well, right? And so, not the best place. They also planted this in the middle of summer. No, we just got to say no to that. We are been working with a lot of municipalities to get them to allow occupancy permits to be released if they wait to put the plants in the ground when they should be, which is not June through probably September now here. Right. So again, how do we think about what's going on in a plant and think about the environment? I'm just going to skip through that. But all right, prevention, IPM, right? What does IPM stand for? Integrated pest management. I like to call it integrated plant management because it's really all about the plant and the pest, right? Not just the pest itself. So you start looking, and these are the things that you're going to have to ask folks when they call you and say, I've got a plant problem. Usually it's not like anybody ever calls me and says, hey, Barb, I'd love for you to come out and look at my really awesome trees. They're doing really, really well. They're gorgeous. How about coming out and looking at them? No, that very seldom happens. How about coming out and look at my half-dead trees,
Yeah.
right? They've got these problems. So again, if they can't get you good pictures, so what's on the plan? How extensive is it? Right, you're keeping in mind that a homeowner might be like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's happened in the world, and you get out there or you see a picture and you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Right, so they might have a little bit different perception about what they think is the worst thing in the world. So what kind of weather? Has there been any human activity? Like, have you dug up your driveway lately? Have you put down a new sidewalk? All of those kind of things are questions that you ask, and when you go to a site to visit, and I don't know if y'all do that, but certainly getting as much information as possible is really important. And then you ask yourself, should we do something about it? Some things kind of cure themselves, other things, you don't know for sure. And I'll tell you, as I said, many of the things that we get at the clinic, we cannot necessarily diagnose what's wrong, because usually it's a suite of issues that affect the plant, not just one thing that we can say, oh yeah, that's it for sure.